Welcome to the Get Real with King Arthur show here in hot San Diego. Supper, you Easterners. Anyway, today we're going to get a new perspective on AI from Mr. Charles Smith in Florida, who happens to be my brother-in-law and who has impressed me with his knowledge. His specialty is information technology. He's worked with IBM and Ned Davis Research all his life and has some interesting new things to say about AI, especially its history. I want to ask a general question of him at first. I'll be informal and call him what we call him Charlie. Uh, Charlie, do you believe that the appearance of AI is perhaps equal to the appearance of the printing press?
I think you're right, Art. I think it's huge.
Are you worried about it or excited about it or both?
I'm excited. I'm not very worried. I have the impression that um, the government can make rules and enforce rules where it touches people um, in the public domain, but I have the strong feeling that the government should not limit research in AI in any way, because I have the feeling we need it as a military competitor. Um, we need facial recognition, and we need robotic um, devices that roam around gathering intelligence, for example.
I forgot to say last time I talked about the laws, state laws, some of them on the operation of AI. I think I forgot to say that the federal government has yet to pass laws on the operation of AI, even though there are what, over 170 laws proposed. So anyway,
Um,
I was fascinated earlier in talking with you to see what you feel is the development of AI, that it just didn't suddenly appear, but that it had a predecessors. Would you develop that a little bit?
yeah, um, it was the late 1980s when I started looking at neural networks. At that time, the smart computer, the computer intelligence was was all logic. It was coded with standard programming, and it all had to do with logic. Well, um, people started playing around with these things that simulate the brain with little nodes that would be connected together like neurons in the brain, and and it was sort of an out group. They didn't have popularity, or uh, they didn't have buy-in from uh, the standard technologists of the day. Um, I I had an application in the organization I was in with IBM that I tried, a little neural network, built in the language that I used, APL. It had maybe 15 different nodes or simulating neurons in the brain. So it had maybe 25 connections among those nodes. And I tried training it to do a certain problem, and it worked in as a simulation of a real world problem. So I wrote a paper about it, presented it at an IBM conference, and I was in Boca Raton, Florida. A guy from Rochester, Minnesota, uh, heard the paper and went back home, talked to his buddy, and said, "I think we could use this as an application of our small business system that we're building." They went ahead and a few months later, they said, "Well, we've applied for an IBM patent and we put your name on it." So all I did was play around with it, write a paper. They went and did the hard work of getting it patentable. And
Did you get wealthy off it?
I got $1,000
Oh,
as an award for first patent application award. And so it went from there to I was just I've been trying to do my homework, Art, so that I could
yeah.
answer questions intelligently. Something here I have says GPT-4 has maybe almost 2 trillion connections, um, parameters, I should say. And the little thing that I built had maybe 25 parameters. So suddenly neural networks are the primary technology in these high-level language applications.
Talk a little more about what do you mean connectors? We
Yeah,
are not. We're kind of not totally out of this language a bit here.
yeah, and everybody uses different language, and it gets very confusing. Um, if you're trying to simulate the process of the human brain, you in a computer you build a component that's part of a program. Um, you build a component that you would call a node. You connect it to other components. Basically, they work in layers. So a simple system like I did might have 5 or 6 input nodes in a layer. Each node is a component of a piece of software. The node is connected to every node in the next layer. So you might have six nodes in the first layer, 5 in the second, and 1 in the last layer, the output layer. And the connection strength, well, jumping back to the brain, a guy by the name of Donald Hebb, brain researcher back in the 50s, I believe, said when 2 neurons fire at almost the same time, the connection strength will increase. The axon from one node, from one neuron to the next neuron will grow in strength. And he argued that that's how the brain, just by probability of occurrence of stimulus to the brain, how it learns pattern recognition. And so with these artificial neural networks, you feed something into the input layer, it feeds into the hidden layer or layers and onto the output layer. If you're trying to train it to do a certain thing, you can look at the error of the output. You can actually track the errors back toward the input and change the weights to to reduce the error and make it smarter. And so,
How do they get what'd you say, 2 trillion
yeah, how
connections
did they
or
get?
whatever?
Well, yeah, it's unbelievable, but they've got these um, little processors, and they'll have 100,000 of them or something like that. They got these little processors that they're they're um, they're processors that were originally developed for graphical operations to produce graphical images on your computer. You link them all together, you run them in parallel, and you just crank for days or weeks or whatever. And um, well, I think they're in subcomponents, and maybe the subcomponents um, are separate enough from each other that you could partially train them individually as components, like 1,000 different components that go into Chat GPT 3, 4. Um, who knows? I'll tell you, there's brilliant minds working on stuff like that. I worked with a PhD from IBM Research Center for a few weeks on a problem we had, and this guy was so far above me, it was unbelievable.
Now, so uh, I don't know whether you told me or someone else told me that, like, what some of these centers, one being in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, they have maybe 3,000 in the office. And how many of those would be thinkers uh, doing the actual mechanical work of tying this all together?
Yeah, good question. Um, Probably, who knows, half of those guys might be technologists, um, and probably um, 20 or 30% of them might have PhDs. They're hotshot guys and girls.
One of the my concerns, you're already over my head, far over my head, but one of my concerns is that they will move from what I call left brain to right brain, from individual facts or factoids into complex synthesis that operates in the right brain, and that they will move from giving information, factual, to decision making.
Mm.
Uh, they already do, and I at a very basic level, said I understand it. For example, I edited and really helped write a book on business operations, and so I know there are steps, and they have a term, the business operating procedure or something, and I can see how the computer would or the AI would follow those steps. But and and I said also with logic, I can teach errors in logic, factual
Mm.
that the AI could test. But I'm worried about how much they AI may move into the right brain. And now, I already told the audience that someone asked it, "Is there a God?" And it did not say. It said there are difference of opinions, and it won't uh, predict. I don't think it'll predict elections. Maybe it will. Does it do that, Charlie?
Yeah, probably somebody will be trying to do that. They have they have predictive applications. You can already bet on who's going to win a football game. You can bet, I think you can bet on political situations in some states. If it can be done, somebody will try to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm worried about that. I've been amazed in on the Gemini program to see it uh, write poems and
yeah.
talk like a person or whatnot. And these poems are pretty good.
Mm.
However, uh, I don't know whether I already told this to the audience, but I got vertigo on the campus where I had taught. And I fell down on the road, actually, and students all around and whatnot. And the we asked the Gemini to write a poem on it, which they did. But they said that that all the students that saw it bowed their head in tribute as the ambulance came and took me to the hospital. Well, you see, that's just a general statement. Actually, I'd never had any of those students. They're all new, so they couldn't have done that. And furthermore, uh, it is unlikely that they would bow their heads or whatnot. And furthermore, I was not. That was not the moment when I was leaving the college and retiring. So yeah, they got a general pattern in this poem, but the actual circumstance seemed to be beyond them, or at least
Mm.
temporarily.
Mm. They do talk about um, large language models hallucinating, making stuff up that sounds appropriate to the to the uh, to the system, but just aren't true. And I can sense, yeah, no wonder you're concerned. That is concerning when it'll feed us information, and if we don't, as Paul the Apostle said, if we don't test the spirits, we might fall into, oh yeah, it must be true because um, the internet says it's true.
Um, so, uh, well, I am worried, as I said before, about personal information that they can know everything about you from all kinds of angles. And I think there are enough laws to protect privacy and whatnot, but they'll they will know more about you than you know about yourself.
Yeah. I was actually going to try to count the number of cameras in the 5 miles between my house and church. I went there today for a funeral, and I got too busy. But there are cameras everywhere, and there are cell phone pinger antennas at intersections everywhere. Yep, they know an awful lot about us. Um,
Are
I'm an internal.
these cameras and will be connected with AI somehow?
I presume they do. They must go to the NSA, and those guys have got thousands of computers cranking. Maybe they run the data in a loop, and they only grab it in case of in case they want to look in a certain area at a certain time in the near past. But yeah, they got it. I'm an
Where
eternal optimist.
where do you think AI is headed? I mean, just more of the same, or uh, what might AI be doing for us or against us? I don't know.
There was an article I read this week in the Wall Street Journal that said, uh, even though somebody put out a report, AI is going to affect X percentage of jobs, and the author was saying he thinks it's just going to make the job easier and faster for the person doing the job, but he thought it wouldn't get very many people fired. They would just move toward doing smarter, more right brain stuff and get offloaded by the AI. He was he was not very afraid of job loss.
But you know, this moves so fast in 5 years.
Hmm.
One wonders just what it will do in 5 more years. Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. Um, you know, I think to myself, like I said, I don't want the United States of America to be behind the curve on on the pure technology of um, like facial recognition or logistics um, or intelligent vehicles. We need, instead of putting pilots up in jet aircraft fighting the enemy, we need AIs or at least sensors that are intelligently directed for information gathering if we want to be competitive. And instead of losing Gary Powers to the Russians for a while, we just lose an aircraft if they shoot it down. So I'm, I'm very competitive about thinking we need a military that's second to none. Of course,
Well,
I don't want.
AI has already changed the battlefield. Could possible to see what a battlefield might be like in the future, or a war,
Oh,
or is that
yeah,
impossible to imagine?
no, I think you're right. It's moving fast.
The uh, obviously we have much to explore from Mr. Smith, and I will eke out of him a promise that he will appear again on our show and help us as we try to understand, especially these technical aspects. So, Mr. Smith, will you promise to return to our show?
I will try to have enough confidence to join you, Doctor.
You have, we have plenty of confidence in you anyway. So, uh, call us in and respond to some of these ideas and help us. We all want to join in this task of understanding AI as much as is possible. Well, you poor people back east, I hope you warm up. We're plenty warm out here in California. Have a good one.